Hello and welcome. My name is Andy Solkeld and this is my UKTC pack review, going over the missions in order to try and help my friends and other people in the community to prepare for potentially their first RTT, or in this case their first GT, as Tide of Conviction, mission 31, is round 4. So this is going to be your first game of day 2 at an event, and this is brutal. It is a hold 2, hold 3, hold more, and you only receive your Battleforge CP bonus, so the CP you get at the start of each player turn, if you hold your home objective. And then at the end of turns 1 to 4, if you control an objective in your opponent's half of the table, you get 2 victory points. But at the end of the battle, on turn 5, each player scores 4 victory points if they control the objective in their opponent's deployment zone, and 2 for each other objective in their opponent's territory. Which basically means there is a huge incentive for going second in this, potentially up to 8 victory points, plus the normal plus 4, because you're typically going to score 12 victory points in the last turn. That's a potential 12 victory point swing from going second. And what that means is going second is heavily favoured. And so the way you play this mission changes dramatically from going first or second. If you end up going first, you have to play incredibly aggressively to try to deny your opponent primary every single turn. And similarly, if you're going second, you play passively. You just hold what you can and then don't commit anything so that you can get that huge bottom of game scoring. You'll need to position ready for it, so start moving things up late game, but it's something to just be aware of. And you need to be able to switch from these two positions as soon as you know the result of that dice roll. When a lot of what I'm going to say is going to focus on going first, because going second is mostly just about sustaining and kind of waiting to win on turn 5. But at the same point, it's when you have to be aggressive that really that's the bit that matters in kind of this mission. And the way you do that is, because this is a hold 2, hold 3, you essentially try to cripple one flank to force your opponent onto just getting 4s every turn. So deny them 4 a turn if possible. Maybe even 0 them if you can, if they're a slow army. However, there are some problems with that, because if you're going to do it, they're also going to try to do it. The far right objective, so you'll see there's your central home objective, then one very close to it in the middle. It's about 3 inches away from your deployment zone, so it's fine to just walk onto, raise banner, etc. But the one to the far right is often by itself, but it's also the only one that has a big L to protect it. And there is no way that you can hold this objective from behind cover. That little L that you see, that is just dense, and as a result it means you are stood in the open, and that is the weak objective, and that is the one that you should be trying to pounce on your opponents. And I've marked it out on here. There are some tricks that can make it easier to protect and to hold, but largely that's the side I always play to crumple, and I try to push it as hard as possible. The other thing that's very strange about this mission, when you compare it to the other mission with this sort of deployment type, is the center of the battlefield is incredibly open. The ruins are actually much further apart, and there is this huge diagonal kind of firing lane where from even your deployment line, you can see the majority of your opponent's their right-hand side, your left-hand side. It does have the similar quirk as with Abandoned Sanctuaries, where you can drive quickly up the right-hand side and shoot their home objective, because those the small L's with bases don't have they have the obscuring keyword, but they're not over 5 inches tall, which means that they don't grant obscuring. So the way I typically play this, because it's extremely aggressive, I want to try to stage in the kind of little staging L to the kind of midway along the left-hand side of my terrain of my deployment. What I'll typically do here is I will carry forth the faithful Rhino forward into that L and try to position it in the typical 1 inch, just outside of an inch back, so that they can't charge me through the L, and therefore they have to go round unless they have small bases. The usual shenanigans that goes on with this stuff, and then I will use that as a launching point. So it might initially have Novitiates in that then just swarm their home objective turn 1 just by disembarking out the Rhino, and then I will have my Repentia in the leftmost ruin that will move up along the left-hand side to then be able to assault that objective again, or move into the Rhino to then launch from there. And what I will try to set up is 1 or 2 turns where I will attack both my opponent's objectives outside of their deployment zone, or I will try to set it up in a way where I charge on and then create a barrier so that they can't walk onto their objectives. Just build a wall with your models, and then they have to charge Repentia or something like that, which then means that I can fight on death and so on. And it becomes, you're just trying, when you're playing aggressive, you have to try to deny your opponent's primary as much as possible on this. That's kind of the left-hand side. I will often keep 1 unit of Zephyrim in the middle to be able to attack it, and maybe a unit of Zephyrim and Seraphim in reserves, but it will depend on what opponent I'm against. On the right-hand side, well, in the middle, I typically have my Retributors staged. So this is 2x10 multi-melter Retributors, and the reason I like them in the middle on this mission is because the middle is so open that they can actually have line of sight onto all 4 of the central objectives in no man's land. And if my opponent is touching into terrain on their home objective, all 5 of them. And what I will typically do is move the 4 multi-melters out in 1 squad, give them Vahl rerolls. They'll try to delete a unit or something, then kill those 4 models when they get shot, pull them behind obscuring so that then they can't get shot again. Hospitaller reses D3. That unit stays stationary, moves the 4 from the other squad out, who then gets Vahl rerolls, and you just kind of do this churning where you're just continually shooting multi-melters. And late game, they will move forward to try to either block my opponent getting onto one of my objectives or anything like that. Key here, try to keep the Dogmata somewhere between the Repentia and the Retributors, because at the end of the game, have your Retributors stood on your home objective or one of your opponents with OBSEC. Because it lasts until the beginning of the next command phase, I don't think it has an end of game caveat. They will still be OBSEC when it comes to scoring the round 5 bonus. Now the right objective. This is the really hard bit. However, you can do a few shenanigan things here. The best thing I have seen to do here is hold the objective with a character that is being granted Lookout Sir from numerous points, and make sure you have something else further forward. So what I will typically do here is I will try to advance maybe some Battle Sisters or move the Castigator or anything like that, so that essentially, unless my opponent is right in front of that character's face, they can't take that object. They can't shoot the character, and this kind of gives you a lot of. It means you can hold it in the open when there's no ruins. Alternatively, just have a just have a unit poke out one model onto it and so on. What you want to avoid is you want to avoid having a unit that is just there getting shot off the objective every turn, because essentially you're giving up an asset to gain nothing. So I will try to hold it with, say, the Castigator or Vahl or something like that, where it can just stand there with some Battle Sisters or another unit of Zephyrim behind in the terrain. You can potentially swap your Retributors into this one and have more central other objectives. The Retributors in general are more durable, so that could be a way to do it. That would be matchup dependent from me. I wouldn't necessarily. I prefer them centrally on this mission, but at the same point, if I'm against an opponent and I see them stacking all their tanks on one side, or everything I want to shoot nearer that ruin, then I will put them there. Zephyrim are incredibly important in this mission. I mean, they're incredibly important in every mission, but this one in particular, because they allow you to move from your big L on the right. I know I haven't got them listed there, but I might deep strike or something like that, but they move them from your ruin on the right into the middle ruin, and then able to assault the other two locations, or the two central opponents' objectives. The thing that's very important is if your opponent has good Overwatch, the two central objectives are great for lining up charges through from behind obscuring. So just make sure you're aware of all these things. And I'm just going through my notes. I think I've covered most of them. With regards to movement, it's 3 inches to get onto your close objectives, and then I think it's 18 to get onto your opponent's objectives. So you need to be very aware of setting up Miracle Dice charges or Zephyrim charges to just be able to missile onto it. I think it could be worthwhile setting up... I know I've got it listed here, but having Zephyrim staged in your home ruin to be able to very quickly assault, say with the Dogmata's Obsec, to be able to assault the right at the same time as, say, Novitiates stealing the left to zero your opponent on primary. Now, this mission looks like a banners mission, and in most cases it is a banners mission, but because you can raise 3 banners turn 1, but you almost have to accept that you are going to lose your right-hand flank. But equally, you're going to deny your opponent their right-hand flank, which means that you're kind of even on that secondary. It's a great defend the shrine mission because it's right next to your home objective. So you basically just hold those 2 objectives. And then it's kind of leap of faith. You're almost always going to take it. Sacred Ground is not bad here. You could score 11 turn 1 with a fair bit of planning. And it could easily go up to 15. I typically wouldn't go... I mean, if you are worried and an opponent gives up a kill secondary, taking a kill secondary is almost mandatory here, because if you go first, you have to push and you have to kill everything you see to prevent your opponent getting that 8 victory point swing plus 4 from scoring 12 at the end of the game. So you really do have to push hard. So taking a kill secondary is not a bad option here, as long as it scores highly enough. But yeah, my default here would be banners, defend the shrine, and leap of faith, and pray to go second. It sounds really bad saying something like that, but this really is a dice roll off. If you roll a dice and you get to go second, you get to say, right, hands off, I'm just going to play passively, and I'm going to score 12 additional victory points at the end of the game. You have to start walking forwards to be able to set that up, but you can very much do it. And if you do that, make sure you protect your Battle Sisters, your Novitiates and your Dogmata so that you can just obsec launch onto all the objectives. However, if you go first, you have to push incredibly hard to be able to recoup the primary disadvantage you're going to have. And yeah, this is a brutal start to day 2, but hopefully this gives you a bit of insight into how I would play this and how I play my sisters on this map. And we'll be back next talking about Mission 5. Thank you very much.